Jonah chapter 1 from verse 1, the Bible said the word of the Lord came to Jonah the prophet. And in verse 3, the Bible said Jonah ran from the presence of God, because the word of the Lord that came to Jonah brought the presence of God to Jonah. And you and I know what the presence of God does. In Psalm 16 verse 11, it said, in thy presence is fullness of joy, and at thy right hand pleasures forevermore. At thy right hand. So there is everything God has to offer is captured in his presence. And one package that brings the presence of God into a man's life is the word of the Lord. Because when the word of God comes, the word of God brings you the presence of God. The presence of God is not just a cloud or a smoke that you see. Every word of God that you truly catch brings you a measure of God's presence. And that presence will deliver to you the resources of the presence. Hope you know the only resource for defense that Israel had was the presence of God. They were in bondage for 430 years without military training, without experience. The Bible said the Lord went before them as a pillar of fire and as a pillar of cloud. With that presence, they went through different nations and no nation was able to conquer them. With that presence, they went through every difficulty that you can imagine and they prevailed. This is why the psalmist said, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, they say, I fear no evil. Why? Not because I'm an orator, not because I'm a king, not because I have a trained set of army. He said, because thou art with me. If you can carry the presence of God, you are eternally victorious in life. And one way to enter into the presence of God is to tap into the economy of the world. The word of God is the carrier of the presence of God. When you find a man whose word level is low, you have seen a man that has a low rating in God's presence. And when you find a man with a low rating of God's presence, you have found a man who is vulnerable. Because without the presence of God, you are defenseless. So the word of God carries the presence of God. Every time you are doing business with the word of God, as beautiful as the educational aspect is, that's not your primary focus. Your primary focus are the things that the word delivers to you. And one of it is God's presence. That's why we search into the word. We dig into the word, because there is a radar we want to create around our life. We want to carry an increased dimension of the word. Number two thing that the word does is that it increases the efficiency. It increases the essence, and it increases the operation of the Spirit in your life. In John chapter 6 verse 63, Jesus said, the words I speak, they are not for education, they are not theory. He said, the words I speak, they are spirit and they are life. So when a man receives the word of God, what is happening to him is that the measure of the Spirit in him is increased. And when the measure of the Spirit in a man is increased, the man is strengthened for destiny. They are spirit and they are life.